that's new.
Yeah.
Doesn't normally do that, does it?
Oh,
I've updated that then. Morning, Debbie.
Good morning, you all right?
Yeah, fine. You?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you.
Excellent.
Oh, hi, Debbie.
Good morning, David, you okay?
Yeah, fine, thank you. And you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
brilliant,
good,
thank you. Just got back from a lovely, lovely weekend of camping, so I feel normal this morning. It's great.
Yeah, you
Nice to
had
have a
good weather
shower,
for it, didn't you?
Oh, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Where were you?
Down Holden Forest,
Oh, I
down
don't
near
know.
Exeter. So it's beautiful.
Oh, yes. I know what you mean. Yeah, just the others, the other side. Yeah.
Really nice.
And how's your shoulder arm?
Yeah, it didn't like camping massively, but yeah, we're all right. It still moves.
Oh, I've got a bad shoulder as well. I can do that, but it hurts.
Yeah, no, I've had a frozen shoulder, so it's coming out of its frozen state, so it's a bit weird, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I had one of those on my right side years ago. But now it's
not pleasant, are they?
no, indeed.
I can see there's quite a few people that have joined us, including someone called Scary Carey. So that I assume that's an iPad that's been given to a child. That's normally what happens. If everybody would like to put their cameras on and say hello, feel free. Let's see who's at their desk. Hi, Liz. Hi, Dawn. Nice to see people. Fran, can you hear us? Audio's connecting by the look of it. Oh, there's Chris. Hi, Chris.
Hi.
How are you?
Very well, thank you, Ashley. Yeah, very good, thank you.
Good, excellent. Hi, Fran.
Morning.
Managed to change your name now.
Yeah, so trust you to notice, hey?
Oh, always sorry.
So I might have used it for some family entertainment at some point, possibly.
we did early in lockdown when we were first started doing these Zoom calls. I think we're up to nearly 200 Zoom calls now Zoom events since March last year, by the way, as a chamber. So it's been a very busy year for us. But we did one. I think Debbie, you were probably on it actually around furloughing, and we had an HR lawyer doing a workshop on furloughing, and her son had got the iPad before her, and she hadn't realised that he'd changed the name. So that was quite fun. I'm thinking, who on earth is this person? Do I let them in? Because there was quite a bit of Zoom bombing going on at the start of all this, wasn't there? And in the end, I thought, I've got to let them in because I don't know who they are. Lo and behold, it was our speaker who we then had to change the name of.
Well, thanks for letting me in, Alistair. I do appreciate it.
No, you're welcome.
It's not the right title for someone that sort of manages a bit of HR here and there, really. There we go.
I don't know. Different hats, eh? Different situations.
Exactly,
I've been called worse, Fran, trust me.
I'm sure. There's knives in the back.
Yeah, I think I've been known as the Terminator on many occasions.
Terminator Morris. Right, we'll give it a couple of minutes and see if we've got some more who might join us this morning. It's not a massive group, so we'll go through a bit of housekeeping initially. I'm sure you all kind of know the drill now around muting if you're not speaking, etc. But we'll do that in a moment. Just give it one more minute. Chris, how's life at Bridges?
Yeah, all very well, thank you.
Good.
Yeah, no, we've continued to work throughout the pandemic. It's coincided with a big bidding period for us.
Right.
The industry that we're predominantly associated with operates these 5-year investment cycles, and there was a bit of a slow start to that. So all the frameworks started being released. So yeah, we've had a very, very busy time of it, but also a very successful time. Our conversion rate for land and frameworks, we've secured 11 further frameworks in the last 13 months, which is great. And they're all now starting to move into that implementation phase. So we're expecting to do quite a bit of recruitment behind that as well. So
busy then.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. We're all still probably 70 of those office workers. Most of us still are working from home, and we've put in a working from home policy, which we're going to be people have like registered their interest and how they want to participate with that, and then looking at the managers, and then looking at how we're going to change the building a little bit for the hot desks, etc. just making sure that people feel comfortable coming back into the work environment, particularly with this, Indian strain that's been referred to. And it was great seeing the news yesterday that there's been 0 deaths, but I still think the vaccination program is still a little bit behind, particularly for some of the younger members of our workforce.
Feels like there's a bit of a way to go, doesn't there, before we can. Yeah. Okay. Good. Excellent. Right, I'm going to get cracking because it's 5 past. I can see that Deborah's joined us. Hi, Deborah.
Hi there.
I will be coming around to ask you for a quick introduction as to who you are and what you're doing, and potentially if you've got anything you're particularly looking for from this as well. So in terms of housekeeping, what we'll do is I'll shortly go around the room and ask you to make a sort of 30-second introduction. David's got a presentation for us, which we will be sharing the slides for. If you're not speaking, I would just ask, obviously, to put yourself on mute just in case there's any kind of background noises. If you've got questions throughout the presentation, if you can put them in the chat function for the moment, and then what we'll do is at the end of the presentation from David, we'll come to that chat function, see if there's anything there that hasn't been answered, and then we'll open the room up as well. So if you've got any further questions from there, feel free to ask. So I think I know most of you, but for those of you that don't, my name's Alistair Tudor. I'm the operations manager at Somerset Chamber of Commerce, obviously a business membership organisation. I mentioned already, I think we're approaching sort of 200 online events since March last year to support local businesses. So a lot going on from our point of view, and we're always grateful to our speakers such as David, who are obviously experts within their fields, to come and help educate and advise other businesses as well. So that's who I am. I'm going to go to Debbie next, if that's okay. Debbie, can you just give us a quick 30-second intro?
Oh, didn't get any time to prepare that, Alistair. That's not fair.
You don't need time to prepare. Come on, Debbie.
Okay. So I'm Debbie Morris. My company is Concilium HR. So I've been a HR generalist now for getting on 21 years and went self-employed in 2014. So I support SMEs across Somerset and into Devon with generalist HR, acting as their remote business partner, strategic HR manager, casework and workplace investigations, and all things employee related, really. So that's me.
Lovely. Thank you, Debbie. Chris?
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. My name's Chris Maddox. I'm the People and Client Director for an organisation called Bridges Electrical Engineers Limited. We're an engineering company based in Midsummer Norton, and we've got offices across southern England and Wales, employing just over 200 people. So I look after the HR function for the organisation, as well as you probably heard on the earlier bit of the conversation, a lot of bid and framework and client interaction.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Dawn, morning. You've got to hover over your mute button just in case I come to
Find my unmute button. Hi, morning. I head up the employment team at Batten Solicitors. We advise employers and employees in all realms of employment matters, mainly employer bias, really. We do mainly employer advice, but as I say, act for both. And we've been advising people throughout the pandemic on the various issues that it's thrown up. So just interested to sort of hear and share ideas about how we move forward in the new normal, whatever that might look like.
Excellent. Thank you, Dawn. Liz, morning.
Hi, I'm Liz Wilding from Brook Financial. We do financial outsourcing and accounts, and we're based just outside Ilminster. We're just looking to, we've mainly been working from home, and we're just looking for some ideas and tips about returning to the office.
Okay, thanks, Liz. Brilliant. Fran?
Sorry, I wasn't hovering. Hi, I'm Fran Carey, Blackdown Financial, practice manager here. One of my hats is HR. We've had quite an interesting lockdown. It's been very busy for financial advisors and the mortgage advisors, probably the stamp duty side of it as well, and the fact that people have got a bit more money to save. We've had a successful time working from home, 10 employees, probably a bit too successful. We've implemented some new software, but I'm keen to regroup and get people back in the office. So that's where we are. I'm like, let's get back in, work more as a team. So I think we'll start seeing the weaknesses of actually home working. And I would just, for me, that's the regroup, I'm calling it, really. That's where we are.
Brilliant. Okay, excellent. Thanks, Fran. Deborah, morning.
Morning.
So apologies for being a few minutes late as well. I had a few technical issues. Anyway, my name's Deborah from April People. So I have about 30 years experience in people management and HR, and April People is 2 years old now. And I've just learnt this morning that I've been a member of Somerset Chamber of Commerce for exactly 1 year now. So 2 birthdays this month.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. So I specialise, not surprisingly, I work in HR, but that's April People's purpose. But we specialise in employee relations, so all those tricky grievance investigations that come about in organisations, particularly complex and sensitive ones. Employee engagement, because I just think there's a perfect balance between good employee engagement and employee relations, and also workplace mediation to complete the triangle. And generally we work with businesses direct, with employment lawyers, and a few London consultancies as well, but we work across the UK. But I'm particularly interested in developing business more in this area. So some of you I know, some of you I haven't met yet, but it's good to meet those that I haven't. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Deborah. I'm going to jump up and ask Laura to introduce herself, because I think sometimes I get the opportunity to do it.
That was really good timing. My doorbell just went off and that would have been interesting.
Oh, good. Do you need to get it?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm Laura Percival. I think I've spoken to most people on the call. I deal with all things events for Somerset Chamber.
Lovely. Thanks, Laura. Emma, morning.
Good morning. So I'm Emma. I am the Training and Contracts Manager at Somerset Business Agency, and we're based in Langport. I'm actually in the office today, which is a nice change from working from home. So we deliver business support to businesses across Somerset. Our main contract at the moment is we work with 15 job centres across Somerset, Devon and Cornwall, helping those that have been made unemployed or long time unemployed get back into work. So since lockdown, the team have been working remotely from home. So today it's to learn about how we can get everyone back in the office safely. So I know a lot of the team have got doubts. So yes, it's just finding the best way to move forward.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Emma. Zita?
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Yeah. Hi. I work at Summerfield Developments. I haven't been there an awfully long time, just under 2 years. We are in Taunton. If you don't know, we're house builders. Thankfully, we've been lucky throughout lockdown that we're still selling houses and everything's going well. Interested in this webinar because obviously now people are starting to come back into the office, and I don't know how many of them are moving forward or want to do hybrid working, etc. So interesting what you say today.
Okay, thanks, Zita. I haven't got a first name, but M. Baxter. I know you're from Garradall. Are you there? Okay, we'll come back. Nigel, hi. We're just doing a quick intro.
Morning, Alistair. Sorry, I came late.
Right.
I do apologise.
Right.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm Nigel Gass from SDS. So we are a supplier of photocopiers, printers, and scanners. Yes, just interested to get an idea of how people are viewing the return to work. We've got all of our team back and have had for some time. Thankfully, it's been quite a busy period for us. Yes, everyone seemingly is pleased to be back in the workplace. And yeah, as we haven't had any issues as such of getting people back from the initial furlough or getting back into the workplace, but we have sort of changed the way that we set up here. So be interested to get other people's takes and obviously David's takes on how things are going to settle down.
Ideal. Right. Thank you, Nigel. Right. On that note, I'm going to hand over to David. As I say, if you can just mute your microphones if you're not speaking. Any questions that you've got, if you can pop them in the chat, we'll come to them at the end. And we'll also have a conversation as well. There'll be an opportunity to ask any other questions that you've got. Over to you, David.
Okay, thank you very much. first of all, if you noticed me sort of wandering about over the last couple of minutes, I've been trying to get the lighting right because we've got bright sunshine. I've got this skylight behind me, which I can't avoid. And I've got a light up here. So you're getting half my face in light and half in shade. I'm just hoping it's my good side. I'm just not sure about that. So yeah, I'm David McCrum. I'm a solicitor, employment lawyer. I've been working, I work on my own, work at home, have been doing so since 2001, advising mainly employers. I have a number of clients. I've got one big client, which is the manufacturers of McVitie's biscuits. So that provides a fair amount of regular work, and then a number of other smaller clients, and working with people like Debbie as well. Anyone on the HR side, providing advice on disciplinary situations, mainly grievance, etc. But of course, today we are talking mainly about the post-COVID world, and particularly as quite a few of you have mentioned, the business of whether people are going to work from home, if you want to get them back to the office, and how you're going to go about it. And I'll talk a bit about vaccination policy, workplace testing, as well as the working from home and office working bit. The first slide is a bit busy, and I'm certainly not going to go through it all, but you can follow these links to all this guidance, and there is an awful lot of guidance out there, and you can't really, it is best to follow, to check all this guidance and see what it is that you should be doing, because ultimately what we're talking about here is potentially there may be employee dismissals as a result. Potentially you may have employees resigning because they don't like what's happening. Potentially you might have employees claiming discrimination because they don't want to be forced to take a test or to have a vaccination. So if as employers you are following the relevant guidance that applies to your line of business, then you're much more likely to put yourself in a reasonable position to defend any claim. But more importantly, you're going to put yourself in a position to agree with your employees on how the workplace is going to look, how the working environment is going to look in the sort of medium term. So if we can go to the next slide, Laura, please. There is this specific government guidance applicable to all these different categories of workplace. So again, you will find specific guidance applicable, hopefully, to you. I think those that list covers pretty much everything. But it is important to get that guidance, as I say. Next slide, Laura, please. And then, so having looked at the guidance, having established what line of business, what category of business you're in, you should look at these 8 priority actions. I say at the bottom, seek the advice of a health and safety expert. I'm not a health and safety expert, so I can't talk in detail about these requirements. But I think the most important thing, first of all, is going to be going through completing a risk assessment and sharing it with staff, along with the other more obvious and familiar requirements that are listed there. The bottom one, mental health and well-being. I mean, that has received a lot of publicity in the last year, and I think mental health of employees has often been a bit of a sideline, and that does need to be brought center stage, or employees need to be given the opportunity of talking about their mental health if they want to, being given access to occupational health. Most employers won't have an in-house OH function, but there are plenty of independent OH providers, and it is well worth making contact and developing a relationship with external OH providers, so you can provide that support to your staff if necessary. So moving on to the next one. Yeah, the working from home where employees can. It is important to remember that guidance still remains. So, so employees are in the driving seat at the moment if they want to continue working from home. It's not just working from home where employees can. It's employers must take every possible step to facilitate employees working from home, providing equipment. And if you want to bring employees back to work before the guidance changes, you may need compelling reasons to do so if the employees are not willing to come back to work. I mean, many employees are desperate to come back to work because they're fed up with working from home. I've got children in their 20s, and they don't want to be working from home. Usually in a small environment, in a flat share or house share, they want to be back in the office, making contacts, etc. So it'll be us more mature adults who are perhaps, I don't ever want to go and work in an office again. I'm very happy working from home, having been doing so for many years. Anyway, if we could go to the next slide. If you do want people to return to the office, then make a plan before you start trying to implement anything. As I said earlier on, risk assessment, and consider hybrid working. Consider, be open-minded about how you want people to return to work. Rather than looking for, I want everybody back at work 5 days a week. Look at alternatives. Vaccination policy. I'm going to talk about no jab, no job a bit later on, but that's something else you should be considering at this point if people are. If you're considering getting people back to work again. I mean, obviously there are many employers where the employee has to be at work to work, and this all isn't going to apply to them. We're talking here about employers where the employee doesn't need to be at work. Next slide, please. Communication with employees, consulting employees. Is going to be really important. I mean, I say there, set up staff consultation committee. I mean, there's no need to, but if you're of a certain size, it may be worth doing that. There's no, as I say, there's no specific legal requirement to set up any kind of consultation, process. But if you are going to be putting in place a new system for working, whereby there may be a hybrid approach, or you may have people permanently working from home, or you're wanting people to be permanently in the office when they feel that they've got used to working from home. It's likely to involve getting the agreement of the employees, because you may well be changing their terms of employment. So communication with employees, consultation with employees is going to be vital in order to bring about that agreement. You obviously want to bring your staff with you and avoid any kind of confrontation situation. So yeah, next slide, please. This is something to mention. It's a slight side issue, but employees, there has been a fair amount of publicity about employees who are claiming that they shouldn't be at work because of COVID, that they shouldn't be forced to go back to work because of the danger of going to work. And there is legislation in the Employment Rights Act which prevents, well, if you were to dismiss someone because they have absented themselves from work or they've raised a health and safety issue where there is serious and imminent danger to that employee or to employees generally, then that dismissal would be automatically unfair. Or if you cause them any detriment because of what they have done, then that they can be awarded compensation. So there are a couple of cases, legal cases, which would be quite interesting to refer to. I've mentioned the Rogers case, first of all, down below. This is a bloke who was a laser operator in a warehouse type environment, who where there was a lot of space and where the employer had taken all the necessary COVID precautions, including social distancing was possible. They didn't all, a bunch of people didn't all have to work together in close proximity. One employee tested positive for COVID and started obviously self-isolating. Mr. Rogers then refused to attend work anymore because he had a baby and he had a child with sickle cell. And so he resigned and claimed he was unfairly constructively dismissed, and or he may have been dismissed. The case actually doesn't, the report doesn't say which, but legally he was dismissed. And he claimed because he had less than 2 years service, he wasn't able to claim ordinary unfair dismissal. So he claimed that the reason for his dismissal was because he had raised this health and safety issue, because he claimed he was in serious and imminent danger of catching COVID in the workplace and then passing it on to his vulnerable child. He lost his case because the tribunal said that the employer had taken all necessary precautions, and Mr. Rogers himself admitted that the workplace was no more dangerous than going out and about, even in lockdown, the lockdown situation as applied at the time. And he didn't do his case any good, the employee, by being seen driving someone not in his family to hospital when that person should have been isolating. And so the tribunal didn't have as much sympathy with him as they might have done. And so he lost his case. It was only at employment tribunal level. It may be, I think if it was going to be appealed, we'd know by now. But it's an indicator of what the way tribunals are going. And this Kubilius case, this was a guy in May last year who worked for a company which provided supplies to Tate & Lyle, and Tate & Lyle had a policy of anyone on their site had to wear a mask. The employer that he worked for had taken all sorts of COVID precautions and had a policy in place whereby they had to wear masks when they were with the customers. But he refused to wear a mask. He didn't have any reason for not wearing it. He didn't have any valid reason. There was no health reason for not wearing a mask. He just didn't want to wear one. So he was dismissed for gross misconduct for refusing to comply with a reasonable instruction. And again, he lost his case because the employer had acted reasonably, had communicated its mask policy to the employees. And there was a danger. He was in his truck, and he's at in an elevated position, talking to people, Tate & Lyle people in the workplace, and was breathing down on them. So a mask is fairly obviously a reasonable instruction. Yeah, those. I mean, that's not so much on the health and safety side, but those are the two cases that have come forward so far, which are which are specifically relevant to COVID. So yeah, just going back up to the penultimate paragraph there, the way that tribunals will look at any dispute that comes before them is going to depend heavily on both the nature of the workplace and the way that the employer has mitigated the risk of COVID. So it again goes back to enabling social distancing, ventilation, and how they deal with testing and vaccination, which I will come on to a little bit later. So yeah, next one, please. So if you're going to go to a new working arrangement, which might be home working or it might be hybrid working, then as I said a bit earlier, you will be amending the employee's contractual terms, specifically the location of employment clause. I mean, if we go back right to basics, all employees have the right to be given what's called a Section 1 statement of terms. And one of the mandatory terms that must be in that Section 1 statement is the location of their work. And so if that is something that should have been told to the employees already, you change it, and that's a change of term which has to be agreed with the employee to be valid. I'll come on to other alternatives, without going through the consultation and agreement process, but that is the best way to change a term of a contract. The other issues you need to consider, fairly obviously, IT security. You've got people working from home, using equipment that they have at home. Ideally, the employer should provide that equipment, so that you haven't got the same you haven't got those IT security issues of employees using their own equipment. You should carry out a risk assessment, which will be a looser affair because someone's working from home. And again, it's all fairly new stuff as to how safe the working environment has to be at home, bearing in mind it is someone's home. But a risk assessment should still be carried out, and again, talk to a health and safety person about that. The employee may have planning issues. I think you are allowed to. I mean, I work at home. This is a home, but I'm allowed to. Planning laws allow me to have an office at home. That isn't a problem. And I think supervision is perhaps a major issue for some employers who, in the past, may have been reluctant to allow working from home because they would feel that the employee is they can't supervise the employee properly, and they're not going to they're just not going to get the work done. And I think it's worth mentioning on that point that there have been many occasions in the past where an employer has come to me and said an employer has come to me reporting that an employee has said, I want to work flexibly, I want to work from home 2 days a week or something like that. And the employer will usually have the knee-jerk reaction of, it's not going to work. I don't want them working at home. They need to be in the office so that I can make sure that what they're doing is what they should be doing. And I think that really what they wanted to do at home is look after the children, and that's not going to work. But lockdown, working from home has shown that working from home has worked in a lot of situations where the employer thought that it wouldn't work, and it's worked with my biggest client, it's worked with smaller clients. So what I'm saying is that if you have employees who want to work from home as part of a flexible working request, it's going to be more difficult now to refuse that request because things have worked out better than expected. I mean, and that's only if they have worked out better than expected. One of the people on the call was saying, quite reasonably, that you're beginning to see cracks in it. And if you are beginning to see cracks in the working from home, working from home, then you're justified in not agreeing to it. But you're going to have to be more have more compelling reasons, I think, than was the case in the past. So next slide, please. Well, I mentioned this twice already, changing contractual terms, consultation and agreement needed. And so this means what it says. You consult with employees, you have a meaningful consultation process. There's no set time period for it. It is a question of putting your proposal to the employees, talking to them individually, giving them time to consider, giving them time to feedback, an opportunity to feedback, and then ultimately, hopefully reaching agreement with them. I've got unilateral change there. What I mean by that is that if you are to unilaterally change someone's terms and just tell them they are going to work hybrid working or work from home or whatever it is, you could, if you do that, employees may well just do it, and that may well work with some employment situations. If you think that the employees are all kind of on board and you've got a good relationship, and then it might be fine. But the danger of doing that is you are breaching the employee's terms of employment, and it could lead to an employee resigning and claiming they've been unfairly constructively dismissed. And if you've made a unilateral change without consultation, you're likely to lose that unfair constructive dismissal claim. So there are always those dangers in going for a unilateral change. Where I've referred to dismissal and re-engagement, that is the ultimate scenario if you've consulted with the employees, but any of them simply aren't going to agree to the change in question. And the only option you've got there is, having consulted, having looked at alternatives, having tried to reach an accommodation with the employee, if they won't agree, and if you have a pressing business need to make the change, and you can justify that business need, then you're in a position to dismiss, and while at the same time offering them their role back according to the terms that you're proposing. And if you've carried out a meaningful, reasonable consultation process, and you have a pressing business need, and you offer re-engagement, then the dismissal is likely to be fair. But you really don't want to go there. It's just you don't want to be in a position where you're threatening someone with dismissal. But that is the ultimate sanction. If the contractual terms are they're set in stone unless you agree a change, and that's the strength of the contract from the employee's point of view. Particularly if it's a fundamental term like work location, i.e., home as opposed to the office or the workplace. Just going back to flexible working requests, I should have mentioned this earlier. If someone is making a flexible working request saying, I don't want to come back to work to the office full time, I want to work from home, continue working from home 2 days a week, 3 days a week, whatever. The legislation is actually very light. You just have to follow a reasonable procedure and give a decision within 3 months. You can refuse a request if there are 8 categories of refusals, and they are, sorry, there's a helicopter going overhead. They include things like inability to meet customer demand and inability to really to work effectively, putting it very broadly. But what you've got to be careful about with flexible working requests is if that flexible working request is coming from someone, particularly a woman who has childcare responsibilities, then you have to demonstrate that what you're that your stance is a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim in order to avoid a sex discrimination claim. So you've got to go further with your justification if there is a childcare issue. Okay, next slide. So yeah, no jab, no job. As I say, no specific law on the issue, and it's a question of whether mandating vaccination is a reasonable instruction. And if it is, then you can dismiss the employee after due process. I say that, but I think a lot of employment lawyers are saying that it's not going to be a good idea to have a no jab, no job policy. I think it's fraught with difficulty. First of all, it really isn't a good idea at the moment until the whole adult population has been offered a vaccine, because obviously there are a lot of young people who haven't been vaccinated yet, and if you're saying no jab, no job, then that could be age discrimination with regard to those younger employees. Then the reasonableness of the instruction is going to depend on the nature of the workplace. That there will be workplaces, obviously care homes, and the NHS is considering making vaccination mandatory. But I think in most cases, it's going to be unreasonable to have a mandatory vaccination policy. You may have a business where some employees have to travel regularly to countries where vaccination is mandatory. In that case, then yes, that will be a reasonable requirement. And you're also going to have to take into account the personal circumstances of the employee, and there may be health reasons why the employee should not have vaccination. And if you apply a mandatory policy, you may be guilty of disability discrimination if the employee in question has an impairment which has a long-term and substantial adverse effect on their ability to carry out day-to-day activities, and that's a reason why they can't have the vaccine, or they won't have the vaccine. Then you're again back to is what you're doing a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim? And if you have a legitimate aim, like that employee needs to travel to a country where they require a vaccine, and it's proportionate to mandate the vaccine, then you'll succeed with a claim. But again, you don't want to be in that position. What you want to be doing is developing a vaccination policy which encourages employees to have the vaccination. Again, I've got a template policy. I'm happy to give it to anyone who wants it. But it is on the basis of encouraging people, and if we can go to the next slide, I think there's a few more bits and pieces about this. You might want to allow paid time off if someone has side effects because of the vaccine. You want to consider encouragement and providing an environment whereby vaccination is made as easy as possible for the reluctant employee. And an important point there, the second one, if you've got a pretty full complement of employees who have been vaccinated, you still have to minimize COVID risk in the workplace. You shouldn't be saying, look, pretty much everyone's vaccinated now, so we'll relax the social distancing and mask wearing, etc. That still has to happen, and you should be still minimizing those risks as part of your strategy to minimize COVID risk. And and that you may be able to do that without requiring vaccinations. It's not one or the other. Consulting staff, I've said that several times. Information Commissioner's Office guidance, data protection. When it comes to vaccination, and having a record of someone being vaccinated, there is ICO guidance which you need to follow, because you're dealing with sensitive data here, people's health issues. Next slide, please. Workplace testing. When this is a bit easier, easier to enforce, if you like. Again, I've got a workplace testing policy. If anyone wants one, let me know. Again, reasonable and proportionate. These are words that come up time and time again in employment law. But if you want to put in place mandatory testing, it's much more likely to be lawful. It's much less likely to be discriminatory, because there are likely to be fewer reasons why an employee would refuse to take mandatory testing. But again, develop a policy, which again, as I say, I can send to you if that's what you want to do. Next slide. I think there's more on this, please. Oh no, there isn't any more. This is about statutory sick pay. As employers will be well aware, for a few years now, you haven't been able to recover SSP paid to employees. You used to be able to, now you can't. Well, except now you can, if it's COVID related, you can recover up to 2 weeks SSP per employee if any of the above 4 criteria are fulfilled. So, well, there it is, it's listed there. You've got someone living with someone having COVID, advised to self-isolate, has tested positive, or lives with someone who's tested positive, or is self-isolating prior to admission to hospital. So yeah, you can recover up to 2 weeks SSP per employee, but that will, well, I was going to say that will go at some point. But there's no, I don't think there's a plan for it to go. But and it's only if the employee is in that sort of COVID situation, other reasons for sickness, absence, the employer still can't recover from HMRC. So next slide, please. Holidays. Yeah, this is a bit. Holidays are not so straightforward. Now you might want to change your policy. I've said there you can ask where an employee is going on holiday, because what you want to be sure about is when they come back, that they can come back to work. If they have to quarantine when they come back, you can withhold their pay unless they can work remotely, and you can refuse a holiday request if it means that they're not going to be able to come back to come back to work when they return. You can't prevent an employee from taking their statutory and contractual entitlement, but you are, if you believe that where they're going is going to put them in danger of, or they're going to have to quarantine when they come back, you can refuse that request, and they have to take their holiday at a different time. But again, consult with staff, amend your holiday policy first, and you may not. It depends if you're small. If you're a small outfit, you may be able to just get through all this on a sort of case-by-case basis. So that's holidays. Next slide. I think this is the last one. Again, I'm not talking in detail about the furlough scheme, but it is still there, remains in place till the end of September. 1st of July, liability increases to 10% of salary costs, and 1st of August up to 20%. So it's becoming less and less attractive for employers, but it is still there. And I've just seen the time. I think I've gone on too long. So I think that's the end. Yeah. So yeah, over to you. Any questions, I guess?
Lovely, thank you, David. will come to that. There was nothing in the chat, but I will come to some questions in a moment from the room. Thank you very much. There's an awful lot in there to unpack and a lot of things to consider as employers of people. Certainly, I had one question around the place of work. Traditionally, obviously, we would all work at in an office, and that would be our permanent place of work. If we're amending contracts to say, for example, 3 days at home and 2 days at work, does the permanent place of work change on that contract, or is that up to us?
Well, the place of work is both office and home. So the employee is entitled to know, well, obviously know where their place of work is, and you can have 2 places of work. It's just got to be clear, or you can have a flexible policy where you say that people have to work and come to work to a certain number of days a week, but they can choose the days, or the days they come to work have to be agreed. As long as there is clarity for the employee as to what days of the week they're working in what location, or what the process is that they have to agree a week in advance, or whatever. It's clarity for the employee that's important.
Right, thank you. Okay, I can see we've had a couple of people join as well. Hi Ben, hi Abby. Right, hi. Debbie's asked a question in the chat. Thanks, Debbie. Question is around the impact of long-term sickness cases, both long COVID and also implications for those with long waiting lists for operations. Will this be classed as disability, do you think, or discrimination if ER decides they cannot cope with long-term absence? So if somebody is off with, for example, long COVID and the implications of that, where does that leave the employer?
Yeah, well, long COVID is going to be able to be dealt with like any other long-term illness, and it could amount to a disability. A disability is an impairment. It has to be long term. I won't go through the whole definition again, but it has to be long term. And what long term means is that it must have lasted for a year, at least a year, or it must be likely to last for at least a year. Now, obviously, with long COVID, well, we may have a few long COVID sufferers who have been suffering for a year, and I think it's going to be quite likely that there are long COVID sufferers who will be disabled, because I think I've certainly heard of cases, people who got COVID early on who are still suffering now, which would indicate that it's been a year, and if they can be disabled, then others may be as well. But it's going to come down to, as usual, getting input from the relevant health professional as to how long the impairment is likely to last, and how seriously it's affecting the employee in question. So you essentially deal with it as a capability issue, as you would do with anyone who has any other kind of long-term illness. I mean, you mentioned people waiting for operations. Again, if they have an impairment and they're waiting for an operation like our shoulders that we were talking about earlier on. Not that a bad shoulder is likely to mean you're disabled, but if you've got something like that, you're waiting for an operation. If it's gone on for a year, or it's likely to go on for a year, then yeah, you will be disabled. But I always say to clients, when it comes to disability, if someone is on long-term sick leave, or even on maybe intermittent sick leave, if they've got a problem which has been going on for some time, I wouldn't start worrying about whether it's disabled or not, it's disability or not. You just, you know this, Debbie, we've spoken about it many times. You look for reasonable adjustments. Consider they probably are disabled, and talk to them about what you can do to try and help them back to the workplace. Talk to them about what support you can provide, and assume they are disabled. I don't think there's any point in trying to decide whether they are or not, and then treating them accordingly. Just assume they are.
Okay, thanks David. It's I think that's going to be one of these implications of COVID that plays out over a long period of time, isn't it? Great question from Fran. Planning to have all staff back in the office from the 21st of June. after risk assessments. Is this reasonable even if the date is delayed? So obviously we saw that Scotland had changed some of their unlocking dates yesterday. Normally Boris seems to follow Nicola. So are we expecting, sorry, a little bit political, are we expecting anything?
Yeah, you once told me off for being political at a table.
I know, I'm sorry. I apologise. So yeah, it's a good question though. Is it if we have plans to come back on the 21st of June, and we were talking about it as a team this morning as well ourselves actually at the chamber, is it reasonable to push that date back if a decision on unlocking is delayed?
Well, I mean, some employers are bringing employees back to work now, and it again goes back to trying to take your employees with you. I mean, Fran, how many employees have you got? I can't.
Yeah, sorry, we've got 10 employees, and there's a couple that are quite keen to do a split week. But as a business, like I say, we'd like to do a bit of a regroup. We have a member of staff who doesn't take lunch breaks, does crazy hours, and we need to manage people's working days better, because I think rather than under delivering, they're over delivering, which is fantastic. But I'm worried about their stress and mental health. So.
Yeah, I mean, for as long as this guidance is in place, employees, must work from home when they can, where they can. You're always going to be on the back foot if any employee says, "Well, I don't want to work. I don't want to work in the office because of whatever reason it is." I mean, ultimately, if they don't agree to come back, what are you going to do about it? If you dismiss them because they're not coming back to work, that may well be unfair. If they've got good reason to be working at home and they're following the guidance, the COVID guidance, and you're not. So what I'd say is if you can get your employees all to agree to come back to work, then and provided you're following COVID guidance at work, you've made it COVID secure as much as you can, then you're going to be fine. But you're not going to be breaking any laws. It's just a question of whether you're going to put any employee in a position where they're going to feel that you're breaching their contract of employment, or maybe discriminating against them, that you end up with an employment claim against you. So it is a question of trying to trying to reach agreement with your employees on how they're going to work.
Okay. Is it a good idea to pin a return date on something like that? I mean, obviously it's an obvious one to do because the government have said, right, well, they flagged this at this.
Well, there's nothing there is logic to that, certainly, because if all restrictions are going on 21st of June, I mean, I don't know whether this guidance that you must work at home when you can, if you can, I don't know whether that's going on the 21st of June. One assumes that it is, but because of the nature of everything goes on 21st of June. But I wouldn't be at all surprised if that's not the case. But tying returning to that date, if the employees agree, then there's nothing wrong with it. Well, I mean, but the thing is, you're going to have to see what guidance does come out, and if it is that all restrictions have gone, then, and if your employees' terms of employment are that they work in the office, and you can argue successfully that the change that has happened over the last year has been temporary because of COVID, then you're perfectly entitled to say to them, no restrictions anymore. You can come. Your place of work is the office. The home working's been temporary. You've got to come back to work. That's where your place of work is.
Okay, thank you. Right, Liz has asked a question. We have an employee who's pregnant and the baby is due in October. She's been working from home, but is keen to come back to the office to work as soon as possible. Can you give us any guidance on it? Liz, just for clarity, is that she wants to come back to the office before October?
Yeah, so she come back tomorrow if she could. She's really keen to come back in the office. She's in her early 20s, so she's not been vaccinated yet. And we just wanted some guidance, really, because obviously we're keen to protect her from coming back into the office. But but obviously don't want to treat her any differently than anyone else.
So are you saying that you might want her to stay away from the office in order for her own protection?
That's the question, really. Should we be thinking about
Right.
her? She's keen to come back to the office herself. We're conscious she's not vaccinated, so perhaps at higher risk than maybe others in the office who will be vaccinated. You know, can we say to her that, you know, does she really want to come back to the office, or is it her decision and we just have to make sure that we've got everything in place, you know, the risk assessments and the policies? Do we have a different risk assessment for her because she's pregnant?
Well, you have to have a different risk assessment for her. Yes, if someone's pregnant, then there is a different risk assessment that has to be carried out. Again, I talked to the health and safety person about that, but then it is her decision. You know, if she wants, I don't know whether she's putting herself more at risk coming to work or not, really, compared to staying at home. If you've got some COVID protection in place as much as you can, then the employer is you know, rarely in a position to say we don't think you should come to work. If there is clearly a clear and obvious risk to someone because they are pregnant, then the employer does have the right to suspend for medical reasons when someone is pregnant, and but I don't think that apply. I don't think that would apply in this case. I don't think the situation is that you know, imminent and serious. I think she's willing to come back. Others have been vaccinated. COVID is very low in this part of the world. So I think I think it's up to her.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much. Chris has asked. Thanks, David. We're intending to. It's like the Radio 2 text messages they get, isn't it? Thanks, David. Great show. We're intending to formalise working from home arrangements for employees, i.e. 2 or 3 days a week. We're intending to do this on a trial basis, reviewed after 12 weeks. Are there any pitfalls, risks with this plan?
No, trial periods are, you know, entirely sensible.
Yep.
And again, try and consult your employees, bring them with you on this, agree it with them. Then no, entirely sensible, and allow for feedback during the trial period so that you hear from them what it's like as well as from the employer's point of view.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Something that we're considering as well as a team as well. You know, have a set number of days that people are required to be in the office, or you know, as a minimum. I think our viewpoint at the moment, and I know we've spoken about this, Laura, isn't it? That, you know, we'll have probably 1 day as a team altogether, and that'll be you know, certainly 1 day where everybody's in, and then we'll have some flexible working around that. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, I've got one client's doing mandating Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the office, Monday and Friday at home. Another client I've got is doing allowing complete flexibility, but every once a year they've all got together to get together over a weekend, which again is obviously needing the agreement of the employees. But there are all sorts of different possibilities out there.
It's a bit different, that one, isn't it, over the weekend? Okay. Fine. Were there any other questions that people had that weren't going into the chat? Feel free to unmute yourself. It's a small group, so. Okay. I'm going to mention a couple of things before I hand over to Laura to close us off. We are running our quarterly economic survey. If you've not seen it before, it's something that obviously we run as part of our affiliation and accreditation to the British Chamber of Commerce. All the information gets fed up and then fed to government, so it really does go to the right places, but we run it locally as well. We've asked some questions actually at the end of the current quarterly economic survey around flexible working and whether or not businesses are going to offer it. At the moment, it looks like over 60% are offering flexible working, and bear in mind this goes to every business, so it might be professional services, it might be businesses that are making widgets or pouring concrete, where obviously working from home isn't really as feasible. But of those 62% odd that are offering flexible working, 33% are offering fully flexible, so there won't be any minimum hours required in the workplace, and nearly 30% are offering 3 days in the office and 2 days at home. So there seems to be this kind of split between fully flexible and then a set number of days in the office. So it's quite interesting to see how that's going. If you do get the opportunity to complete that QES, please do. It's very important for us. So and we'll obviously feedback on what those flexible working arrangements are like, and we're going to try and do it by sector as well. So you'll be able to see in your sector how you compare and what you're offering and how that compares to other employees in your sector. It's really worth doing. I will mention, if you need any kind of introductions to health and safety companies, obviously it's been mentioned a couple of times, please do contact us as a chamber. We have lots of members that are in health and safety. David, are you happy for us to share these slides with the group? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
And you mentioned there was a workplace a policy that you have as well, that you'd be happy to share.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a working from home policy. I've got a hybrid working policy, vaccination policy. So any of those templates, and I've just seen Debbie's got one, home working policy. So I'm sure Dawn at Battens has a policy. I'm sure that Deborah does as well. I'm sure we've all got policies that we're all desperate to send out to you, so you can take your pick.
Well, as you presented for us, it feels right that we should offer you the opportunity to share the policies that you've got. So yeah, I mean, if you can send those to Laura, we'll make sure those go out on the thank you and the follow-up email with the slides as well. So, yeah. So thank you. I would like to say formally, David, thank you very much for supporting this event and for giving us the benefit of your wisdom. Thank you for some good questions around the room as well. I'm going to hand over to Laura. We'll finish the event.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thanks, David, again for supporting the event. That's really informative. Thank you to everybody for attending. Just wanted to mention a couple of events that we've got coming up. There's a lot on the website, so in the follow-up email I'll send a link so that you can have a browse. I'll mention a couple. We've got Making the Most of Your Chamber Membership with Jen on the 23rd of June. So whether you've been a member for a year like Deborah or longer, feel free to come along to that, just to refresh yourself really about chamber member benefits. We've got a ladies event on the 16th where we've got Clark Wilmot sponsoring with a lady judge speaker. So if any ladies on the call want to attend that should be quite interesting, a bit different. And we've got a workshop on June the 29th with Compass Video on how to promote your business better using video. So that'd be quite interesting as well. So
you've been busy organising physical events for later in the year as well, haven't you? A return to physical events. So yes,
I have. So on my follow-up, I'll put the link to September events, because we're looking to start these from September, and we've already got about 4 or 5, I think, booked in for September. So been very busy. So I'll send that so you can have a browse at the summer barbecue and things like that are on there. So
it's worth mentioning, the summer barbecue is always popular, and I think we're nearly a third sold already on that. So don't delay.
Yeah, no, don't. But yeah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Yep.
See you all soon. Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.